about this since it looks good. Oh, shit. Wow.
When you hear this signal, when you hear this signal, when you hear, when you hear, when you hear this signal, hello, 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 girls, 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 girls.
Hello, hello. I am Paul Bennings. I'm the founder and owner of Heavyweight Apparel of NYC. We are NYC's leading provocative lifestyle brand, and we are also the last vestige of street fashion and design. We sell athleisure wear that's sustainable, is made with 7 times less water, and we've been in business now for going on 3 years.
Hello, Paul. How are you?
I'm so excited. I'm nervous. I'm all kinds of things. Like no one ever invites me anything.
All right, so this is all right. So one, you can't be nervous with me because you can't be nervous with me. So that's number one. Let's just get that right off the bat.
Uh-huh.
And also just the fact that no one's invited you or anything. Like, you know what? I found you, so I found you and I invited you. So let's get the ball rolling. I want people to understand who you are. So before we talk about your business, where are you? I mean, you said NYC, but where are you? Where did you come from? Oh, good. You have T2. Yay! This is good. Excellent. I'm happy here. Let's just I want to learn more about you because I don't know you. I mean, of all the people that I have spoken to since I started this podcast, I know probably 80% of the people that I have that I've been taught the conversation with. But then there's random people that I see, and I'm like, this person might be very interesting to talk to. And as a former TV and radio producer, I can find you. I mean, I can find you if I see something, an article, I can track you down. So I want people to understand who you are before the business started.
Yes, well, I tried, well, my background is in graphic design, but
Oh, no. You're starting with business. No, I want to know the man before
the man before the man before the brand. I went through a storm in life, went through a series of failures, and it was one of the things that just made me want to bet on myself. I just started to believe in myself more. Went through a rough patch some years back, divorce, jail, just shelter. So I went through a whole stint that lasted a number of years. And from that, I somehow got my faith. My faith was restored. So, I just decided to use my God-given gifts, my abilities, my talents to just kind of make something I can call my own. Because the system, even when I came back, and even with a bachelor's and with a master's, I couldn't find a good job to save my life. So, that's where it all began. That's what fuels me. That's what continues to fuel me.
I know it's easier to start in the middle because this is where you are. You're starting in the middle. I want more. So you're born and raised in New York?
Born and raised in New York.
What borough?
42 years young in May.
What borough are you from?
I'm I'm originally from Queens, from Southside Jamaica. Let's see, but I lived around a bunch of boroughs. I lived in Manhattan a couple of times, lived in Brooklyn a couple of times. So, but I would consider myself to be a Queens native.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, I shouldn't say, conceived in Haiti, born in Brooklyn, New York, raised in Massachusetts, but every other weekend we were pretty much in New York because like we were our relatives, Queens all the way. Queens and Brooklyn are where 99.9% of my American relatives live in Queens and New York. So there's a little something there. Just wanted to find a little connection here.
I probably know you. You look familiar.
Well, I've lived in Massachusetts my entire life.
Oh, well, never mind then. Maybe I'm one of your cousins then.
We do look very much alike. I mean, you can't pass a Charles without realizing, oh yeah, that's a Charles. So you're pretty much raised. I mean, you're a Queens kid. So schooling. I mean, just walk me through who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get a better understanding because the questions of the business can't come up until I get a better understanding of like your tried and true, your trail, your yellow brick road.
Sure. Again, a child growing up in the 80s in New York. We at one point, my mother and I and my sister, we moved back to San Francisco. Well, we moved to San Francisco. We lived there for about 3 years, which was one of the best times of my adolescence, my young life. Loved it. Then we had to move back to Manhattan, and I hated it because I forgot how cold New York is. We lived way uptown, Dykeman projects. That's like at the tip of Manhattan. You could like walk across the bridge into the Bronx. Then we moved back into Queens, which at that time was a bit different because when I lived there the first time, some years back, all my friends were gone. So now there's a whole bunch of new kids that I don't know. We didn't really mesh so well, but we stayed in Queens. More troubles along the way. My growing up. At one point, I even I had to leave home for a couple of years. I went upstate to a place called Children's Village in Dobbs Ferry. I was up there for 2 years. It's called a residential treatment facility. I still don't know what the difference between that and the group home is, but it's more or less the same thing. After that, after my stint there for 2 years, we moved to Jamaica, Queens. This was in the early 90s, and it was rough. It's a lot cleaned up now, but back then it was rough. I had a hard time. Went to Jamaica High School, if that means anything to you. You know what I'm saying? I went to Jamaica High School. I hated that school. More difficulties along the way between my father and I, who's now in heaven. But at that time, we weren't getting along so good. But I mean, that's been water under the bridge a long time ago. I had to go stay with my sister for a couple of months. And then from that point on, that's when I just went straight to college. And I got nothing done. I was very unproductive. So SUNY Morrisville, if that matters, if that means anything to you. I was there for about a year. And then, I flunked out. Went to Queensbridge Community College or Queensboro Community College, which was a horrible school. Went there for a couple of months for one semester. And from that point on, I didn't have another hand to play. The last card I had in my hand was, I'm gonna try this military thing out, and after some research, I was going to join the Marines for all the wrong reasons. I was like, hey, Marines, they work out a lot. You could get swole. And then my sister was like, the Air Force is a better bet. You should try looking into that. So an Air Force recruiter, I signed up, and that summer I was shipped out, where I served for 8 years. You want more?
No, we're gonna pause there for a second. So now I'm gonna rewind here. So um they always, all right, so the joke of all jokes is always, you never want to join the Army and the Navy. You want to join the Air Force and the Air Force, because you get steak and lobster versus, like regular peas and chicken kind of a situation.
I've heard that joke.
Not so much. Is it not so much?
It's close enough, minus the lobster tail, but it's a better, let me say, look, the food is better. Let me just say that. Hey.
Food better because of, in regards to the education and what you're being taught. So you're this kid from New York. You're hanging out, you're doing your thing. You realize that you want more. The military is a gateway of like literally like providing the necessities of education, a lot of structure, because you weren't getting it, like, I mean, the structure, the male interaction, right? Am I getting that, understanding that a little bit? And you're getting a skill set that you pretty much could use in so many different ways. So now you're San Diego, you're New York, now you're in the military. How was that the transition from, because you use the word I hated, horrible a lot in this of your youth, and then you go into the military where most people have disdain for the military or they have accolades. You were 8 years. So how was that in regards to the transition of who you are now?
The transition was very, very difficult. Very difficult. Coming from a city which is predominantly Black to a completely different institution that's predominantly white, with different mores, different way of doing things, so that was my experience. I have never in my life had any white person, step to me and point their fingers at me. But in basic training, when you're dealing with drill sergeants, that's what you're dealing with. But even when I went to my first duty station, it's still a different way of life. It's just different. Whereas as a civilian, you get to just, if you want to quit, you throw up your middle finger and just walk out. But now, just being a part of this different institution, where there are pretty much rules for everything. Like, you just can't just quit. You can't just say no, or you can say no, that's your choice, but that comes with consequences. So my first 2 years in the military was very difficult until I finally found an OG, a mentor of mine.
When you say OG, I'm sorry, just because you throw out acronyms in any situation, everyone's gonna be like, I go, wait, does OG mean the same thing for him? So what is OG for you, please?
Just another way of saying mentor. He was like a big brother to me, and we're still friends to this day. And he just took me under his wing, and just gave me some game. That helped a lot. That helped understand the military, how to navigate through it. And for a time, I kind of flourished and things went good, but I was still a knucklehead. I think when you're in your 20s, you're just automatically a knucklehead. So I was still doing knucklehead like things. You know what I'm saying?
I love that you're still laughing at the fact that, like, okay, I could recall the things that I did and I could still laugh about it. That's which is a good thing. So, like, is 2 years of hard, difficult, and then you find a mentor, and that's 6 more years. And so what did you get out of the military that makes you you? Like, I mean, that young guy that walked into the military, and all of a sudden now you've done 8 years in the military, in the Air Force, and you're like, okay, I'm this whole new person. Like, what did you walk away with that is still part of your heart and soul?
2 things. Okay, 3 things: structure, discipline, and I know what I don't like doing. All right. Like, I know what I don't like doing. I always say whenever I have these types of conversations, when I was in the Air Force, I was an information manager, which is a fancy word for admin guy sat behind the desk. And I know that I never ever want to do that job again. So I know what I don't like doing. I know what I don't want to do. I know what I'm not good at.
Mhm.
That's what I got from that.
When you left, or when you decided to conclude your your career in the military, what was your next step? Like, where did you want to go? What happened after that?
I still wanted to travel. I still wanted to see the world. I wasn't quite ready. Wasn't ready to get out. Wasn't ready to settle down. Wasn't ready to just stay home. So I had a brief stint in the Peace Corps. I went to Kenya for a couple of months. And after that, kind of floated around, job to job. No, I'm sorry. That's not what happened. No, after the Peace Corps, I decided to go back to school and get my bachelor's because it was during my stint, my stint in the Peace Corps, I realized that I had no real skills. I didn't have any skills, like what I knew or what the military taught me, like in terms of fixing computers, and that's a skill. However, I was never certified in any of it. So I looked at that like, hey, look, I need some certifications. I need some paper to make myself more marketable in the workforce. So yeah, Peace Corps, then I went back to school.
What was the so you're back in school. What was your major for your bachelor's?
At first it was digital film and photography.
Mhm.
And I think I studied that for about a year and realized not really a fan of it.
Mhm.
And then I went ahead and changed majors to graphic design.
Beautiful. So then what happens?
Well, what happened was divorce. What happened was uh, incarceration, or incarceration first, then divorce, and then after that came the shelter. So I had to take I think it was about 6 months off from school, and I was able to come back um, early 2012. I'm sorry, early 2013. Early 2013. And while I was in the shelter, I still went to school. I still kept up with my studies, and eventually, later on that year, December 2013, I graduated with my bachelor's. So, I ended that year on a positive note.
How does I mean, there are, I feel like I could break up the past, I don't know, like 20 minutes of our conversation. I could break up three clear paths in your life so far. So you had the childhood, the traveling back and forth, relationship with your parents and your sibling. You had the military, the whole entire concept of knowing that I didn't want to I don't like that whole entire people telling me what to do. I know what I didn't like, but I found mentorship. So I found my way. And then you had that gap of your life where there were some definitely the hiccups, the bump in the roads that happened. And yet you still found the light at the end of the tunnel of I'm still, despite what's happening that are so negative and it's bringing me down, I'm able to find schooling and graduating from school. With all those three chunks, what defined you the most? I mean, like what did you learn from those three major moments of your life that defines who you are right now?
I learned what not to ever do again. I learned that you should never, ever lose control. You should never do that. So I learned what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I also learned how important it is to have a regimen. It's important to have a regimen.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's working out, whether it's prayer, meditation, the thing that gives you the most joy in life, you need to be doing that. And you need to be doing it as often as possible, along with working out, exercising, and eating right. So I learned the importance of what not to do. And I also learned the importance of having a regimen. And I think that's it. Those are the two big things I learned. What not to do and having a regimen.
And so now, did you start the business before the master's, or did you? Because you mentioned did I not hear that correctly? You got it. Yeah. So did you start the business before, or what came first, the master's or the business?
The master's came first.
Okay. And your master's is in what?
Internet marketing.
There you go. Like a digital marketing, a graphic design, and they come together. The world of marketing.
Yeah, I realized after, $100,000, spending $100,000 on that education, that you don't need a master's in that. So that's my lesson learned about that. I call it a 2002 degree. Maybe if this was like in 2002, then I'd be like, oh, yeah, that's the wave right there. Okay, I'll get a degree in internet marketing. But yeah, it's I'm proud of my master's. I work hard for it, but whatever.
You know what? It's funny that you even mentioned that. I just finished a certificate at a very well-known university, and the class was garbage. The class was absolute garbage.
There you go.
I was frustrated from beginning to end as a marketing person, and what I was seeing, and I'm like, I commend the university for promoting this. I commend them for the amount of students that they got, and I think that it was more so because of the school. But honestly, as a marketing person, I'm like, this is garbage, and I'm paying a lot of money for a logo.
Facts.
Yeah. Which at the end of the day, not all people know that. For years to come, I knew it from the start. And then I had to sit there and I had my come to Jesus moment thinking, I'm just paying for the logo, and you got to let the anger go of garbage. So I'm with you there. All right, I'm with you there. So now you have the master's, and you are, what happens next? Like you have your master's, and then you start the business. And how and why did this business come to be?
Every masters, everything was so slow. Everything. I mean, because even while I was in school, there's still a life to live, and there's still the mess to clean up. Mm-hmm. So when I enrolled in the master's, although I was no longer staying in the shelter, I was now in transitional housing for veterans. Mm-hmm. I worked a job. I worked for Goodwill. Shout out to Goodwill. They gave me a job, with my cute little blue apron, and took the donations and wrote you a little receipt.
Can I just stop you for a quick second? Mm-hmm. I love that you had this job, because sometimes someone's ego gets in their way from taking on a role when they need it. So right now, there are a lot of people that are furloughed, they're laid off, they just can't find a job. They just graduate from school, they can't find a job. And their egos are getting in their way of getting them to do something. So, what would you say to someone like that? Because either they want to start a business and they just need funding, or they just need to pay rent. What would you say to someone that is like, nah, I'm not taking that job?
Well, ego is something else. The first question that comes to my mind is, how bad do you really want it? How bad do you want that thing that you're going after for? Do you want it bad enough to where you would just submit and humble yourself to maybe take a few steps back to reposition yourself, to, build your base, to strengthen your base, raise capital, gain connections? How bad do you really want it? If I'm hearing that, then that's probably a sign of that person's lack of maturity, or maybe lack of insight to their needs and wants, or they just don't want it bad enough. Those who want what they want bad enough will go through hell and high water to get it, by any means necessary.
Yeah, I was raised with the whole entire concept of you are above and below nothing. And to know that my parents came from another country to come to America, and for any moment in their minds to even hear us saying like, well, we want it. Like, if you want it, you will find a way to get it. And you are above and below nothing. So if you're going to be a trash collector, be the best damn trash collector. If you're going to pick up coins, be the best coin collector, but don't assume that you cannot do any job. And so I've walked dogs, I've painted houses. I mean, I've done those things just because in my mind, I'm below and above nothing, and I can do it, and I'm going to give it 120% over someone else's like, I would never do that.
Real talk. Real talk.
During the pandemic, I'm seeing a lot of people saying like, I can't find any jobs. I'm like, well, I'm seeing signs right outside my door saying help wanted. Oh, no. I don't want that. I don't want that. So do you want it or do you not want it?
Yeah, that ego is something else. You know, and trust me, it's something else. So I don't know how, a person could, sometimes you just have to get out of your own way. So whatever you want, you're going to have to get out of your own way, and ego be damned. You're just going to have to just, humble yourself and do what you have to do. It sounds a bit cliche, but there it is. There's really no other way to phrase it.
And I love that you said it. So you took on that job, but what other jobs did you have? And again, getting to the business, how did you get to this point where you own your own business? How did it start? Where did the idea come from?
The idea came from years and years and years of failure and extreme poverty. That's where the idea came from. And, just trying to dip my hands into the workforce now with degrees, now that I have them, and I still can't find anything, or I'm being denied access or whatever. While working these dead-end jobs, I worked in a labor position. I swept, cleaned bathrooms on a boat. Worked at a couple of call centers, and afterwards, when I got fired from the last job at the call center, I just decided to just bet on myself and come up with my own thing. That was 2017. I dedicated my entire self, my entire being to learning this thing called entrepreneurship. I attended every workshop class that was available, some for veterans, some weren't for veterans, whatever was available. They were like 4, 5, 6 week long courses. I was in a 6 month long course, and some of these courses or workshops were good. Some of them were whatever, but I just went. That was what I dedicated myself to, because I just, I had my moment of clarity, and there were a series of them. Was just, I'm looking within and I see the gift, but I'm being told no. So I'm like, well, no, yes. You know what I'm saying? Like, I need to be here. The people who are telling me no, they aren't as cool as me. They're nerds. So who gets to decide? And the answer to that question was, well, I get to decide. So I will put myself here, or I will work towards putting myself here where I belong. But starting a business is really simple. It's really easy. It just requires some paperwork and a few dollars. But even there was a series. There were a number of incarnations of the business, of the brand. So it wasn't overnight. It was a couple of other things before it became an apparel brand.
I love you just said it's starting a business is easy. Well, a lot of people will beg to differ on that. I go, I'm going to be one of them, where when I started my business 11 years ago, I was in an MBA program, and an MBA teaches you how to propel a company, not to start one. And so when the world imploded in 2009 and I started my company, it was hard. I mean, it was just like, I felt like the 2 years of being in my master's was like a joke, because I was starting something that I'm like, I have no idea how to do any of these things. And like you, I went to all these different events. So when someone's hearing you say starting a business is easy, they're gonna be like, oh. Like I go, that's a hard pill to swallow when someone tries and they don't succeed at it.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about sales, if you're talking about your model, then sure, I'm not, there's no argument here. But in terms of putting together an actual, your legal structure, whether you're a sole proprietor, whether you're LLC, whatever you want to call yourself, that just requires paperwork and a fee, and you're technically a business.
Right.
That's what I was alluding to.
Okay. All right. Very good. So you said that there was tons of iterations before it became what it is right now. So, what did it start out as, and what is it now, and who are your target audience to the now?
Started out as a blog. That's what a blog. And I had my heart set on that for about a good 4 or 5 months until, I just wasn't really going anywhere with it. And then I had this great talk. I had 2 conversations with these from these consultants. First one was a young man. I mean, different company, different everything. But the following day, it was with another young lady. I think her name was, I forget her name. It could be Jacqueline. Anyway, she, at the end of the conversation, because she was like, well, how does it make money? Or I volunteered to tell her, look, this is how the blog makes money. The blog makes money by me selling merch, what's now called merch. And I made a bag, and it was a provocative tote bag and everything. She liked the tote bag. She said, oh, I really like that tote bag. And originally, the blog was going to center around Black entrepreneurship. That was going to be the whole theme, the whole basis. And I'll never forget, for as long as I live, the end of that conversation, her closing lines were, you can either continue writing about Black entrepreneurship or just design dope clothing. I said, man, I would rather design dope clothes. You know what I'm saying? Like that speaks more to me, than writing, And from that point on, there was a brief period where a brief incubation period for the brand. Right before it became Heavyweight Apparel of NYC, it was at one point called Heavyweight Entrepreneurs of NYC. And I left it. I didn't touch anything for a month after that conversation. I just had to go back and think about this, pray about this, think about it some more. And then it came to me, apparel. It's important. That's what I was thinking back then. It's important for me to throw in the word apparel so there's no confusion about what I do or what I sell. So after that conversation and after a little bit more time of reflecting, I came out with what was now today Heavyweight Apparel of NYC.
How do you, like, I mean, you got to think about this for me. I'm just like, as you're talking, I'm like, how does a guy that is, I'm doing the rewind. You're New York, San Diego, back to New York, military, tough times, decides to start their own business, blogger, and then you're a designer. And you're in New York. You're in New York where it is fashion mecca. And how the hell do you become a designer? This woman liked the bag that you did. I have no idea what this bag looks like, but how does one become in the apparel business, knowing that you did not mention, even your degrees, you haven't mentioned designing or apparel at all. So did we skip something in the story here, that you have had this secret little thing that you do? Because if you did, share it now, because I'm like, not that you can't do it, but how did it, you just like all of a sudden started apparel?
Yeah, I can answer that question. The cool thing about graphic design is that it gives you a very broad foundation of, you know, of design. So, you know, it's designing a logo is easy to me. You know, designing some type of graphic is easy, you know, and in this day and age of computers and what's now known as direct to garment printing,
Yep.
you know, it's very simple. So, you know, it's not like your traditional fashion designer, you know, who is up, you know, who's sketching and with all the dimensions. No, I don't go that far. I don't go that deep, you know, but in terms of designing a hoodie,
Yeah.
you know, that's very simple. That's what I've been trained to do, you know, as a
Okay.
graphic designer. So those skills translate over real well.
I think that, and thank you very much for saying that, because in my mind, I work with graphic designers all the time, not thinking twice about it. And I suppose if you were going to do a logo with a shirt, you could do that, a logo with a shirt with no problem, but I would have never put them together, because when you're thinking about design of fashion, especially in New York, you're thinking about the couture, you're thinking about like integral parts. And so you're not putting that concept of the design as a designer. A designer is a designer is a designer. It's like when someone says to me, hey, I'm looking for a photographer, and I find one, and they're like, oh, I only do weddings. I'm like, so if you're telling me if Michael Jordan walked past you right now and he wanted to do a jump shot, you couldn't take that photo? They're like, well, of course I could. Well, in my mind, a photographer's a photographer, so I should have known better to even assume that. So you start taking what you know, what you've done all your life. You've traveled around the world because of the military. You've traveled throughout the country, East Coast, West Coast, because of your family. You have a cachet of all this knowledge and all these things that you've seen. Is that part of your design? Is that part of like the how design has become so seamless for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's an embodiment of all my experiences. You know, that's precisely what it is. And it's even why I went with the name. You know, heavyweight synonymous with, you know, the victory. You know, it's synonymous with, you know, when you get hit, you get knocked down, you get back up. You know, it's synonymous with perseverance. So yeah, absolutely.
So it doesn't have to do anything with boxers.
Well, it borrows from, it does have a boxing analogy attached to it, which is, you know, getting, getting knocked down and getting back up, sparring with life. You know, you're constantly in that ring sparring, you know, and some days or some rounds rather, you're going to win, and other rounds you're going to lose. You know, some fights you're going to win, some fights you're going to lose. So it does borrow from the boxing analogy of what it takes to be a winner. My way of doing things was to make it sexy, you know, sprinkle some sexy on it, and you know, you have what you have.
Who's your target audience?
Looking for the ethical fashion designer, the ethical fashion wearer, one who is into sustainable fashion. I'm looking at selling to people who are between the ages of 25 to 40 years old. They are environmentally conscious, environmentally just friendly. They want something that's eco-friendly. They want something that causes less harm and damage to the environment, because a lot of these clothes end up in landfill. In fact, 57% of it does. And clothes are the biggest or the fourth biggest pollutant on the planet. So I'm looking to sell to people who are, you know, just very mindful of the environment, and you know, the destructive role that a lot of these fast fashion brands play.
I was going to ask you in regards of why does the city kid care about this?
The same reason why I care about a lot of things. You know, you know, growth. You know, when I was in my 20s, I didn't care a lot. I didn't care about a lot of things. Now that I'm in my 40s, I care about a lot of things. You know, I care about a lot. I care about us. I care about Black people. I care about the planet. I care about animals. You know, I care about, you know, how women are treated, depicted. Some music that I grew up listening to in the 90s, I can't really listen to it like I used to,
Right.
you know, so this is just me, I think, getting closer or getting more in touch with my spiritual side and also getting closer to nature, maybe even closer to God. I don't know.
I do love that. We are lots of months into the pandemic. You have a very, very young company. What did, like, March 2020, the buzz started happening, things started shutting down. What did that do for you? I mean, what did it do for the fact that you are growing a business, you're getting that traction that you've worked so hard to do, and now we're in a pandemic. So what did that do for you, your team, the product, the people that can actually touch and feel and wear and buy your product?
Well, I'm still kind of trying to figure that out, but for the most part, let me tell you this, that I decided very, very early on, even before the pandemic, to make the brand more content oriented, to put more emphasis on content. And one thing I've learned is content is, and I'm borrowing this phrase from one of my idols, Dame Dash. He said, content is pandemic proof. So you can shoot a video. Well, you okay, you shoot your video, you monetize it, upload it where on whatever platform, and that's another revenue. That's another revenue right there. You know, so that's what I have my eyes focused on, you know, content, because none of us know when this thing is going to turn around. But I've been putting more focus and more emphasis on you know, video production, quality of videos. That's why, you know, in addition to apparel, I also sell my behind the scenes videos of my photo shoots, because the work, the nature of the brand is very provocative, you know, and you know, I've been hearing over time that, hey, I want to see what your photo shoots look like for those who can't access it, for those who aren't there, you know. So, you know, I put together some branded customized videos. I sell those, you know. So I think you know, I'm sorry, I'm having a little brain fart, but that's what I've been focusing on, content, the importance of it.
No, and you know what? It wasn't a brain fart because it was good because I knew where you were going, because I wanted to do a follow-up where I always say content is king, distribution is queen, and context is the kingdom. And I mean, this is not Jodi's words. This is like, it's what in the marketing world we use, because the context of how you're creating content that's now marketing material for you, because it shows that you're still tried and true your brand. I mean, the designer, the graphics, the whole entire apparel, everything that you're doing solidifies I'm an expert at what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And I think that that's amazing, where you're showing people different levels of what you have to offer. I think that people got stagnant where I only do this and this is what people see. I'm like, well, this is a perfect opportunity when you're, especially you can't go into your shop, you can't seeing something being sewn, you can't get any comments from anywhere where it's being done. This is an opportunity to show another side of what your business is all about and why it's there. So I love that you were able to create more content so people can see you at a different level. Let's switch gears for a little bit. You're a vet, and you even mentioned how you went to all these different events for vets. I work with a lot of vets.
Oh.
And one of the things that I hear a lot is that they say, when we leave the military and we go back into the civilian world, it's hard to be in that office. It's hard to be in any structure because it's not structured. It's said it's structured, but it's not structured.
Sure.
Now you're designing, you decided to like start your own business, and you went right back to what you know best with all the other vets, because I'm seeing more and more vets saying, I'm going to take the money that I got from the government and I'm going to start something new because I was taught a skill set. and or before I came in, I had something. So how was it to get back to you're no longer Air Force, but you're military. You're all in it together.
Mm-hmm. You talking about the transition from military to civilian?
No. I'm talking about when you decided to like start your business and you started going to all these events that were for vets to help start the world of entrepreneurship.
What was it like interacting with them? What was it like sharing space with them?
Well, yeah, exactly. Because you're no longer just with Marines. You're
Mm-hmm.
with Army. You're with like reserves. All of you guys are together, but you all are entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
So how was it your guys of? I mean,
Yeah,
collaborative or I mean, how
sure.
for you? And
Yeah.
was it still helpful to this moment?
Yeah. Now, with veterans, and it's real quick, I just want to retract. As I look back, I think most of the workshops I attended were in fact just regular civilian. Now that I'm looking back, so my bad on that. But the cohort that I'm in now is veteran specific.
Mhm.
It's well, I gotta be honest. I don't want to disappoint you. I don't get too caught up on nostalgia. Like I'm a veteran, but I don't wear that on my sleeve. It's more for administrative purposes. I'm a veteran on paper. In my day-to-day life, that's not something I really wear. So when I come in contact with other veterans, you serve, I serve, cool. And that's just kind of what it is. The military, although it played a major role in my life, and yeah, in some areas it has defined me, but at the same time, that was so long ago. I got out 2007. That was 14 years ago. So I don't really get too caught up on the past. When I think of the military, I think of great times in terms of when I travel, things along those lines. But to be honest, these are more exciting times in my life.
You're not disappointing me because I'm learning. So never ever say the fact that I don't want to disappoint you. Just so you know, I mean, so I was a teacher, let's see, probably 23 years ago. So I'm 52. Well, 52 months. And so I was a teacher, like little, because I was talking about it, and I was talking to someone recently, and I was thinking about it. But I still teach. I mean, I have interns. I mean, teaching is like part of what I do, and it is part of me. And do I talk about it? Is it on my resume? Is it on my LinkedIn? No, it's not. But there's a whole group of people that know that I was an educator, and they're like, "You work with kids all the time." I'm like, "Why?" I'm like, "I was a teacher." They're like, "You are?" So that's why you're with vets now. Although it was 14 years ago, you're still with your people that they see. Like, you guys think differently. Like, I mean, I'm a civilian. I will never think like you do. It is for you what you went through, and good times, bad times, the learning parts, your informative years. And so that's why I it's not a disappointment, but it's like, for me, it's just like connecting the dots of who you are, what you do, how you do it, and then to be with, especially when you guys make fun of each other when you're in your branches. And
which is so annoying. So I hate it. I'm like, more tired, lame Air Force jokes, and they're just mad because we joined the better branch. Like, that's your fault.
And yet you're still talking smack right now. You're so funny. When the world opens, like when the world opens, and we like 75 to 80% of people, I see, I'm pushing up, like where some people say 70%, 75 to 85% of people are vaccinated if they choose. We go back into like business as usual. What does your business look like? Like, where do you want to go with this?
Yeah, and thanks for asking, because I have this conversation with my girl all the time, and I'm glad she's patient enough to just for me to listen, kind of rant off my dreams. The ultimate goal is to have a store. I want a physical store. I want a physical building, and I want to create a great experience. I want something that's cool when you walk inside of it. Like a Supreme or something along those lines. Off-White. I know they don't have any stores over here in America, but their stores are all overseas in Japan and in the Philippines. But I want a store. I want a physical building where you walk in and it's just everything's heavyweight. You see the great pictures. You see the, just want to create a good customer experience.
No, it's so surprising because we are living in a world right now that pandemic pushing
Yeah.
brick and mortar is not the way to go.
Yeah, I know.
So how is it that you still want to have that physical brick and mortar?
Well, the thing is that, I read an article about a couple of months ago that there is a good number of people that yearn for physical intimacy or the human connection. So that need is still there. The need to be in a physical space as opposed to being in a virtual space. What I'm going to do is wait this thing out. I'm gonna wait. That's my strategy. I want to wait it out. So when the world recovers, when the world heals, whether it's 5 years from now, and I hope it's not that long.
That's a long time.
I'm just throwing out numbers.
Yep.
Whether it's 10 years from now, fine. Well, 10 years from now, I'll have me a store. If that's how long it takes. So in the meantime, what I'll continue doing is I'll continue building, I'll continue growing, I'll continue refining, and I'll continue getting better. So when the world opens back up, when that opportunity presents itself, then I'll have the bandwidth to be able to handle that, and I can do it.
I have to say that your model is smart because food trucks. I mean, a lot of food trucks that I can't afford a brick and mortar, but they created that following. They created the individuals that I go follow my app and my truck will be here, and people started food. And when they were able to, that brick and mortar was never empty. I mean, now, but that was like it's a great model where people, when the food trucks first came out, people were like, "That's never going to work. It's never going to work. That doesn't even make any sense." So that's a good thing. What would you say to someone that is looking to start their own business and they're just scared? So again, the individuals that are they have something, they have an idea, a concept. Individuals that are getting paid by someone right now, but they're working from home, and guess what? That commuting time, all that time that I would be on the commuting and the being at the coffee maker, now I have that extra time to build and research my own thing. What would you say to a person that is like, they're just right there, ready to start, but they're like, I don't know.
At some point, you're going to have to make a choice. Either you're going to do it or you're not. So, I'm empathetic on the indecisiveness and, the uncertainty. I am. Trust me, I am. But it really comes down to choice. And I don't mean to sound so callous, but it really does come down to that. Either you're going to do this or you're not. And the reason why I could speak on that is because I've been in the middle ground too. I think I have. I'm sure maybe at one point, maybe I don't think I was there long, but I was in that little middle ground, dabbling. Hey, am I going to do this or am I not? And all you do is just ultimately waste time. So you're going to have to just make a choice. Either you're going to do it or you're not. And, sometimes you may have to kind of sit on that for a little bit. You may have to think and reflect, but either you're going to do it or you're not. But I know now is the best time to do it. 5 years was the best time to do it. It's a good time to do it. I think we're living in the day and age where it's really the best time to start a business. And again, it only takes a few papers to sign, and you pay a fee, and then you're technically a business. Sometimes people, just human nature, we have a habit of kind of making things bigger than what they are. So that's something else to keep in mind. But yeah, I would say go for it. It's the best thing you can do in terms of trying to obtain some kind of independence or financial freedom or whatever freedom looks like to you. You should definitely go for it. And if it doesn't work, then you try.
I have two more questions for you. Technically three, but just
okay.
two.
All right, go ahead.
how are you doing during this pandemic? So like, I mean, you're running the business, you're coming up with ideas, you're coming up with creative ways to still stay relevant. How are you doing with the fact that this is all going on and yet you still, like, it means it's like separating you from work and play?
You mean just me as a person? How am I doing during the pandemic?
You as a person.
Excellent.
I love it.
Excellent. Excellent. You know, I have a woman in my life that helps. You know, I have my faith. I have a regimen that I have been sticking with for the last 9 years. You know, and you know, if you have a regimen and love in your life, which is, you know, really the added bonus, then that can get you through pretty much any storm, including a pandemic.
You know what? That's like something that which I love hearing, because people get overwhelmed, and this pandemic for a lot of people have been extremely overwhelming. So can you give us like one thing in your regiment? Like what's, I mean, like, I mean, how does one start a regiment? Because when someone hears a regiment, they're like, am I doing yoga? Well, like, what am I? So, I mean, some tips about balancing that work and life during something like this. And also not just during a pandemic. I mean, having your own business is a lot of work. And
Yeah, it is.
and you can go down the rabbit hole of being only doing this all the time and not realizing when people are asking you to go out and do things. So, I mean, what are some steps? Like, what? Give me one of your regiments, but also, how does one add a regiment to their lives? And you know the rule. I did it for 2 or 3 days, and then I jumped off the bandwagon.
Well, I mean, real quick, and just to get you set up real quick, do what you love. I don't care how silly it is. I don't care how innocuous or how just arbitrary it may seem. Do what you love. That should be the first. I mean, forget about monetizing it. You know, at this point, just do what you love. Let's not even factor in, you know, monetizing it. That can come later on. You know, two, diet and exercise. Like, you have to eat clean and you have to work out. And for that person who's overwhelmed with, you know, the 9 to 5, well, I would say to that person that they would need to look for a way out. Look for a way out so they can get connected or come back to doing that thing they love doing, or doing the thing they were born to do, whatever their gift is. So, and that's tricky, by the way, but let me add to that real quick. You're going to have to spend a good amount of time raising capital. Now, that's a job within itself. But the thing with raising capital is that it buys you time. Because the biggest thing that's like a death to dreams, like a dream destroyer, in my opinion, is the 9 to 5. Because you have to work there 9-10 hours a day. You're there 40 plus hours a week. So at what point do you have time to commit to your craft? At what time do you have, at what point do you have time to commit to your gift? And that's horrible. So I would do those 3 things. Do what you love. You got to eat clean, you got to exercise, and also raise capital. Raise capital. That is huge. That is a huge component to, you know, buying yourself some time and freedom.
Yeah, I love the fact the two in regards to the regiment part. And no, and we didn't discuss this, but yes, the raising capital, finding weight. I mean, look, we talked about it a little bit in regards of doing a job and leaving the ego at the door, finding the capital in regards of buying time so that way you can like actually refine what you're doing. But yeah, and keeping yourself healthy. If you're not able to keep yourself healthy, it's harder to get to these other things.
Sure.
And for me, I'm always like mind, body, and soul. Balancing out work and play is all about mind, body, and soul. And if you're surrounded by people that are just not fueling you, I mean, we've heard it all before, but if they're not fueling you, if they're not believing in you, if they're not able to have deep conversations with you in regards of like what you're doing, how you're doing it, and like what the world has to offer, I mean, honestly, like, I mean, it's, I don't even know. I don't even know. All right. So I can keep talking to you for days, because I mean, we didn't talk about, there's so many different things that Black Lives, I mean, I always say the pandemic is Black Lives Matters, the economy, there's so many things that we could have talked about, but I don't want to take too much of your time. And I've already taken close to an hour. So I have one last question.
That could be next interview.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is why I tell people, this is not just one conversation. This is many conversations.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, small businesses, entrepreneurs, and innovators have so much knowledge, and you can't be found unless someone's looking for you. And so the second I find you, you're added to that whole entire dossier of like, hey, something's going on right now. I'm going to tap into Paul and 2 or 3 other people, and we're going to have a larger conversation. So definitely, you're right. Not the last conversation. Last question for this time around is, if you had a personal ask and a professional ask of anyone that's listening to you right now, a personal and a professional, what would be your personal ask and what would be your professional ask?
Oh boy. Let's see. A personal ask. Oh Lord. Personal ask. Follow me on Instagram. Is that professional?
No, that could be either or.
Yeah. Follow me on Instagram, heavyweight_NYC. Business. Someone get me in contact with Mr. Dame Dash.
All right. Well, no, wait. Who's that?
Oh, he's one of the founders of Rockefeller Records.
Mm-hmm.
He also helped found Rockaware.
Okay.
Rachel Roy.
I'm not a hip person, so my cousins make fun of me all the time. They say things, and I'm like, I don't know what that really means. And then I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not a hip person. I go, I love to learn, but I don't know everything. So I'm asking, like, what is that? What?
Now, but Dame Dash, that's my, my biggest, and he's my biggest idol, inspiration. So, like when I look at his business model, I emulate it. So I have no problem saying that.
Well, you know what? We all have, it's one idea is ours and 99 are borrowed, stolen, or influenced. And so it's very rare that we find original things out there, but we find things that are added to. So it's like the layers of how the product or the services gets better. And so, yeah, it's a good thing that you have someone that you're looking to and you're envisioning your company to be like. That's like a compliment. That's a huge compliment. But Paul, it was so nice talking to you.
You as well. I'm so honored. I'm talking about it I'll be talking about it for the rest of the month.
No, I mean, you know what? I mean, again, like, there's so much more to you, and there's so much that I want to talk to you about. But I mean, this is good. The first time, this is good. Tell your lady friend you did a good job.
I sure will.
Oh, my friend, thank you so very much. I mean, I love that you're in my world, and I love the fact that you shared your story, and there's going to be much more to you. So yay to the way that you came to be right now. So thank you.
Thank you. And you as well.
Thank you. And I will talk to you soon.
All right, Jodi.
Bye.
Bye.